quick history lesson given what's happening in neighboring Bangladesh. Sheikh Hasina's regime has come to an unceremonious end after angry young Bangladeshi protesters brought her government to its knees, defying the curfew, consequently ending the Awami League era. This significant outbreak in Bangladesh has scripted a new chapter for the country's history. Jubilant-looking crowds waved flags on the streets of Dhaka and vandalized Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's statue. He is not just Sheikh Hasina's father, but the founder of the nation and its former prime minister. Thousands of protesters stormed Sheikh Hasina's palace, with scenes eerily matching what was witnessed in Sri Lanka in 2022. Protesters broke through the gates of Sheikh Hasina's official residence, prompting her to flee the country by a chopper when the army itself gave up on protecting a democratically elected leader. This country, which was born out of the 1971 Liberation War, is witnessing its worst political and civil disruption. Today, more than 50 years after the war, Bangladesh stands at the crossroads of its political future, and therefore it becomes important to understand the creation of Bangladesh and some of the important leaders who shaped it. What essentially happened was, after India and Pakistan split and we gained independence, two territories known as West Pakistan and East Pakistan came about. That is when the struggle for Bengali rights began. Relations between East and West Pakistan turned sour due to West Pakistan's refusal to accept Bengali as a state language, due to economic disparity between the two parts and the hegemony of West Pakistani ruling elite over East Pakistan. There was also an imposition of martial law amongst the several other reasons that I've listed. Tensions arose between East and West Pakistan over cultural and linguistic differences which West Pakistan refused to acknowledge. The language movement in 1952 saw protests in East Pakistan demanding recognition of Bengali as an official language. Several protesters were killed, further fueling the discontent. In 1966, leader of the Awami League, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, father of Sheikh Hasina, proposed the 6-point movement, which demanded greater autonomy for East Pakistan. This movement gained widespread support for East Pakistan. Later, in 1968, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and several others were arrested and accused of conspiring with India to secede. This further galvanized support for the Awami League. In a major turn of events which happened when the first democratic elections were held in Pakistan, the Awami League, led by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, won a landslide victory in East Pakistan, securing 167 out of the 169 seats allotted to East Pakistan in the National Assembly. However, the ruling authorities in West Pakistan were unwilling to transfer power. Therefore, on the 7th of March 1971, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman delivered a historic speech in Dhaka calling for non-cooperation with West Pakistani government. The speech inspired millions and is considered a turning point in the liberation movement. In response to violence, members of the Mukti Bahani, this is a term that you may have heard recently as well, a guerrilla resistance movement formed by Bengali military, paramilitary and civilians, launched a mass guerrilla war against the Pakistani military, liberating numerous towns and cities in the war's initial months. At first, the Pakistani army regained momentum during the monsoon, but Bengali guerrillas counterattacked by carrying out widespread sabotage, including through Operation Jackpot against the Pakistani Navy, while the nascent Bangladesh Air Force flew sorties against the Pakistani military bases. India joined this war on the 3rd of December 1971 after Pakistan launched preemptive airstrikes on northern India. The subsequent Indo-Pakistan War involved fighting on two fronts, with air supremacy achieved in the Eastern Theatre and rapid advance of the allied forces of the Mukti Bahani and the Indian military. Pakistan surrendered in Dhaka on the 16th of December 1971, what remains till date the largest surrender of armed personnel since the Second World War. So this is precisely, and that is the iconic photograph of Pakistan there the Pakistani army surrendering to India, and the rest, of course, as they say, is history. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman became the first Prime Minister of a liberated Bangladesh. Why is it important for us to really understand the context and the history in which Bangladesh was formed and what really is happening today? I take this conversation forward with Major General Gigi Dwivedi. I also have with me Ambassador Veena Sikri will be joining us in just a short while from now. But let me begin with Major General Gigi Dwivedi. Major General Gigi Dwivedi, if you can also shed some light on what happened, sir. What were the circumstances that truly led East Pakistan to rebel against West Pakistan? I know I've sort of glanced over it, and in half an hour one cannot understand the history of a nation, but what were some of the atrocities that were being committed by West Pakistan that truly prompted a guerrilla movement in Bangladesh?
Well, Devika, it's very important to understand the history so as to view the current situation in the perspective. And to that extent, I think you gave a very brief but very concise analogy as to what was the history of East Pakistan post-independence in 1947 and where we stand today. Well, I'll pick up a few of the issues because I was part of this war. I fought this Bangladesh war as second lieutenant. It was just 20 years, commanded platoon in as part of 14 Jat, and was in 3 major attacks to start with in the area of Mia Bazar and Kamila, and finally ending up very close to Dhaka in the area of Narayanganj. Well, you rightly brought out that when the elections were held, Sheikh Mujib got the thumping majority, but the dispensation in West Pakistan were unwilling to transfer power. Now that's where the story begins. And when Sheikh Mujib gave a call for independence on 7th March, thereon the Pakistan army, they took a very, very serious steps to quell this movement. And that was Operation Searchlight on 26 March 1971, where Pakistan army went hammer for tongue, and it was a genocide which was worse than the genocide of the Jews in Germany. And if you give, I give the figure, they are startling. Almost 3 million Bengalis were done to death. 300,000 women were violated, raped. And I think the whole country was in a very dire state. And that's where the Mukti Bahini jumped in, and then the guerrilla warfare started. And you brought it very rightly that on 3rd December, Pakistan attacked on West Pakistan, then India reacted. And that's the day we went into Bangladesh. And as I said, I was part of 14 Jat, 301 Brigade, 23 Division, and the 4 Corps. Now, few things which I want to highlight during the war. You see, Pakistan army had adequate strength to defend itself, but after first 2-3 days, it lost morale because its officers let down the men. Secondly, Pakistan army fought under the shield of Razakars. A mention was also made recently in this current situation. The Razakars were the one who didn't support the independence of Bangladesh. And these were the people who were pro-Pakistani, rather the front face of Pakistani. And that's where the current situation stands, that there were elements in Bangladesh who did not want the independence of Pakistan. And these were the Razakars and the sympathizers of Pakistan. And now currently also the situation is, when you look at Awami League, you look at the Bangladesh National Party, you look at Jamaatis, there are 2 segments. One who fought for the independence, one who were not wholeheartedly or fully opposed to the situation. So all I can say end up is that on 16 December, the surrender took place. It was the largest surrender in the modern military history, where 93,000 Pakistani soldiers surrendered, and Bangladesh became an independent nation. And India played a major role in this, changing the history of the subcontinent, splitting Pakistan into 2, and the creation of new nation of Bangladesh. And 2-3 important issues from here on. They say history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. And that's exactly happened on 15th August 1975. There
Yes.
was a in Bangladesh where Sheikh Mujib was assassinated and the power was usurped by Ziaur Rahman, who again was dethroned and assassinated in 1981, and Irshad took over the power. The point I'm trying to make is the military has had a role in Pakistan politics, and today what you see also that the chief of army staff, Wakar has played a major role in this bloodless coup, and willy-nilly he is actually calling the shots. So the point is that military rule in Pakistan is detrimental. Unfortunately, the way situation has played out in last about 48 hours is very unfortunate both for Bangladesh, for the region, and for the country. And today, rightly so, Bangladesh is shambles, and it is going to take very many years for it to come on the track. But those of us who fought for the country feel very, very saddened and also feel pained and hurt
Yes.
because we lost a lot of men for the independence of Bangladesh.
Nijan, Gigi Vivedi, I'd also like to understand from you. So you said there's an important point of reference as far as history is concerned. Now, India, of course, played a critical role in the liberation of Bangladesh. The history of Bangladesh, therefore, political history as well, one has to understand it from a point of view where you've pointed out that there have always been forces within Bangladesh that were pro-Pakistan, and therefore they resented entirely the role of India. Even back then, there were conspiracy theories about India fueling the guerrilla war in Bangladesh. And today as well, Major General G.G. Vivedi, we see that somewhere there continues to be certain sections within Bangladesh that want to once again add fuel to some of those rumors that India has had a role to play in the internal politics and the internal functioning of Bangladesh, and that is being used as a weapon against Sheikh Hasina. The fact that her father, with India's assistance, liberated the country, and many years later, in his daughter, we found a leader who had the guts to stand up to Western forces, but also realized that India is an important ally in the region, and she took decisions and made calls basis that assessment.
Absolutely, Devka, I think you have rightly pointed out. The point is that if you look at the history back and go back point in time, sometime in March, April, the India was flooded with the refugees, and about 10 million refugees had come into India, and that's the time India was itself not even food sufficient, and our Prime Minister went all over the globe to garner support, but unfortunately, no direct or forceful support came up. So India had no option but to go in because we had the burden of 10 million refugees and we were directly being affected. Now, second point is that during the Bangladesh war itself, as I earlier brought out and you reinforced my point, that there were forces which were not keen on Bangladesh independence, and they were the pro-Pakistani forces. And these forces somehow have had the roots and they have not been weeded out, and that's what has happened that time and again, these forces, especially Jamaati elements, the ISI has been playing a very major role to not to lose influence on Pakistan, on Bangladesh, and of course the Bangladesh National Party has also the sympathies and soft corner for Pakistan. Now these elements have currently exploited this situation. The whole situation which started with the anti-reservation quota took a different turn because there were certain elements which hijacked the whole movement, and these are the elements of Jamaitis and Jihadis and those who are pro-Pakistan, and of course ISI definitely has played a big role, and there are certain Western nations also which have played a role. And not to forget, China has deep interest in Bangladesh. China has invested for $20 billion, and they were not quite happy with the way India-Bangladesh relations were going and how Bangladesh has progressed. Just an interesting case, Bangladesh had overtaken India's per capita income. Bangladesh economy was growing at a very rapid rate. Bangladesh was known as the Manchester of East Asia. So the point is that number of factors have combined, but this movement was hijacked by pro-Pakistani elements, by the elements whose interests are not in larger they are inimical to Bangladesh interests, and therefore this unfortunate, end has taken place for Awami League. But also at the same time, I would say that situation could have been handled better. This issue of quota could have been put at rest, not the time it was to be raised, and certain policies of the Prime Minister, former Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina, were not in the larger interest of the public, or they have not been benefited. But that is a different point altogether. But the final point is that forces which are inimical to Bangladesh, which were against the friendship of India and Bangladesh, which were against the waning influence of Pakistan and China, have played a big role in this current situation.
But Mir General Jidit Vivedi, at the same time, was there uproar the world over in 1971 as well, in the years following that, when India did assist its neighbor in its war of liberation?
Well, as I said, that India basically had no choice, because we ourselves were hugely burdened by the refugee influx, and no power in the globe actually came forth lightly to help us out. There are a lot of lip service. And mind you, the kind of genocide that had taken place in Bangladesh, unparalleled, but the kind of dissent or the kind of reaction that came were very subdued. So therefore, India had to go in to sort out this issue because we were directly involved. But the second point is that Western powers continue to help Pakistan. The 7th Fleet was in Bay of Bengal. And had we not, finished the operation in time, there was possibility of American direct or indirect intervention in this 71 war. So therefore, the Western powers were sympathetic to Pakistan, because Pakistan was an ally of West. It was part of the CENTO organization. It was also initially part of CETO organization, and it was considered as an ally of West and especially of America. So therefore, it's absolutely right that Western sympathy and American sympathy was with Pakistan, and in fact, as history is evident, that certain amount of nudging was done to China also by America, that why don't they come and put some pressure on India's border so that India is not able to finish this operation as it finished into independent Bangladesh.
So, Mir General Jidit Vivedi, the reason why I asked that question was that, do you feel that today it was possible without any sort of Western influence for a coup to take place in Bangladesh? The fact that the army, in a sense, gave up on extending protection to Sheikh Hasina?
Well, someone who follows Bangladesh very closely, Devika, I can say categorically, there have been foreign forces which have been behind what has happened in the last 2-3 days. And the army and the security forces just giving it up was something which was not expected. And incidentally, the chief Wakar Zaman was closely associated, has some even relationship links with Sheikh Hasina, and she brought him in as her first choice. And there are reports that she was warned against it. But the point is that this could not have happened without some kind of foreign forces involved, without the ISI involvement, and also the Chinese, because, Sheikh Hasina had gone for a visit to China and she cut short a visit because obviously she did not get the kind of support. And Chinese possibly were not very happy or were not very supportive of the way things are being handled. So there's doesn't require a great analysis to figure out that how this thing have happened. Definitely there was a foreign hand, and the forces which are anti-social forces, the forces which are not in the larger interest of Bangladesh, exploited the student agitation. And also I want to tell you that I saw in 71 the students are very patriotic. They were not the one who would have done this vandalism and hooliganism. So therefore there are forces which are well outside the student bodies who exploited the situation, and this is going to have serious repercussions for Bangladesh as also for the region and also for India.
Absolutely. So I'll come back to you in just a moment. Lieutenant General Shaukin Chauhan also joins us on the broadcast. Lieutenant Chauhan, we were discussing earlier certain aspects of the 1971 War of Liberation, but I'd just like to understand from your perspective, are there any parallels that can be drawn to the situation in Bangladesh today?
Good afternoon, Devika. Definitely. The parallels are very clear and everywhere. You just uh, see it emerging and see it happening. I agree with Jan Javedi that the when you're looking at the complete, you look at the inner circle that surrounds India, you find that there's a change in opinion of almost all the governments. Whether you come to Nepal, or whether you come to Bhutan, or Sri Lanka, or Maldives, uh, in all these countries, you have a different kind of government taking over, which is not inimical to India's interests, which is inimical to India's interests. So the first issue is that there is definitely some hand being played in Bangladesh that is creating this problem, but that is a hand that is also a puppet master, which is creating a problem in most of the nations around us. And while this revolution in Bangladesh might be something quite alone, at least in our immediate neighborhood, you please also look at please look at Myanmar, the situation in Myanmar, where once again the central government, the government of Myanmar is fighting an insurgency, where China is helping both the government of Myanmar as well as the insurgents. So in each one of these situations where China has an interest, in Bangladesh, she has an interest with the Bangladesh port, the port the Dhaka port. Bangladesh in Burma, she has an interest in the Yangon
Yes.
port. So each one of these ports are places where we are losing it because China has an interest and is willing to change the government so that those interests suit us.
At the same time, Lieutenant Shokin Chauhan, officially the guerrilla movement, the Awami League movement began in March of 1971 in Bangladesh. India only intervened by December of 1971.
Yeah.
What were the circumstances? I just like to understand from your perspective as well. What were the circumstances that prompted India's intervention in the swift operation that was conducted?
We had no option. We had almost 7 million refugees. We had an extremely difficult time. The 71, we were not ourselves, feeding, had the ability to feed ourselves. And we had 7 million refugees coming inside our country. How would we feel them? That's when Mrs. Gandhi, the Prime Minister, she went on the world tour to convince the nations that, look, they needed to help us. And very few nations virtually promised, and no nation actually helped. We had no option but to help Bangladesh or the Mukti Bahini fight for independence in Bangladesh. And because we were helping the Mukti Bahini fight for independence in Bangladesh, Pakistan decided to launch a war against us on the 3rd of December. But the issue is, Devika, you have to take into consideration that when so many millions and millions of people come inside your country and you can't keep them,
Yes.
and they are affecting the demographics of your country, especially critical areas of our country, you have to try and prevent the situation. And when you try and prevent the situation, and we tried our best to tell Pakistan, look, don't do this, take your refugees back, take your people back. Pakistan was not interested. Secondly, there was a genocide on. And whether the genocide, no matter what, as a human being, as humanity, as a part of a country which professes human rights, you can't see people being killed by the Pakistanis just because they have opposed Pakistan politically. So the war started more because Pakistan decided that India was helping the Mukti Bahini, and therefore
Yes.
they came to us. They decided to launch the war.
Yes, Lieutenant Shokin Chauhan, at the same time, do you feel that somewhere forces within Pakistan and those pro-Pakistan in a liberated Bangladesh continued to somewhere harbor resentment and use that resentment against India as a weapon, and they've not let that resentment die down.
I have no doubt, Devika, and let me sort of course, I see the Ambassador Secretary there, but let me sort of qualify this. I led an Indian Army delegation to Bangladesh in 2018, and I had a couple of officers who were my liaison officers, and these liaison officers later, who kept in touch with me, told me that there is a very clear group between the Bangladesh Army, between the officers who supported the Indian intervention and the officers who didn't support it, or who supported Khalida Zia or Ziaur Rahman. So that schism has continued. And that schism, because it's continued, the issue was that the Indian intelligence informed Sheikh Hasina that the present chief is not supporting her, or he is pro-China. And China, and as General Dwivedi said, that when Sheikh Hasina went to China, she came back a day earlier because it didn't, obviously it did something which irked her and which she didn't agree with, and she decided to return. That what happened exactly is not known to me. But definitely there is no doubt in my mind that there are two groups in that country. One is pro-India and one is pro-Bangladesh, pro-Pakistan. And more than pro-Pakistan, they are now pro-China, because the present chief has I think, done a course in China, has also been courted by China for a while now.
Right.
So, yeah, we've been informing her. Of course, whatever I had, I informed my government when I came back in 2018 about the schism in the Bangladesh forces, and that's the problem. The problem is that at present, the forces that are being supported by Pakistan, China against India within the Bangladesh army are definitely in a greater and more dominating position.
Right, absolutely. I want to bring in Ambassador Veena Sikri as well for a last word. Ambassador Sikri, I just want to understand from you, ma'am, what are the parallels that you can perhaps in your experience draw from what happened in 1971 during the War of Liberation and what is happening today in Bangladesh?
Well, of course there is. I fully agree that it has been a completely polarized society, and the polarization has happened not only in 1971. There were millions of freedom fighters who gave their lives for the liberation of Bangladesh, but these were the ordinary people. They were students. They were, people working in the fields. They wanted freedom from the Pakistan colonialism. But let us say, the wealthy class, they did not join the liberation war so rapidly or so irregularly as the others, and many of them were abroad. They left the country and came back later. So this polarization in Bangladesh was there in 1971. But I must tell you that as far as we talk about the students' reform movement overthrowing Sheikh Hasina, this is not correct. Because the students right from 1971 have been Awami Leaguers, and because of their participation, the reservation was given for them. But in 2018, when Sheikh Hasina was Prime Minister, she was the one who agreed to abolish the quota, because again the students wanted it. So when they went to her and they were doing a demonstration, she agreed to abolish the quota. So for the last 6 years, and right till 21st of July, when the Supreme Court gave the judgment, it is Sheikh Hasina's government who was with the students and accepting what they wanted and going to the Supreme Court to challenge the High Court decision which had restored the quota. So all this was happening. But in the meanwhile, while this was going on, we saw that the Chhatra League, the student wing of the Awami League, came into force, and the Islami Chhatra Shabir, the student wing of the Jamaat-e-Islami and the student wing of the BNP, they came down. They joined the agitation, and they hijacked the agitation. So today these are protesters, they are not students. And I think that what visuals we saw yesterday, that the people are, the first action after Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's resignation and departure was to bring down the statues of Sheikh Mujib. Now, he is the father of the nation for the whole country. All students revere his memory because he's the one who gave them independence, and they all want that independence. So to say that the first thing they would do is to break his statue, to burn his house where he lived and where he was assassinated, and to burn Gana Bhavan, all those visuals, what you could see, they didn't look like statues at all. So the point is this quota reform movement was completely hijacked. It morphed into something else. So you have to think that there's probably something behind it. It was everywhere, all over the world. If there's a student movement, if there's nobody else behind it, it peters out. There are discussions, you get some points, you don't get some points, and the students carry on with their lives. But if there are forces behind it, political forces, outside forces, that is when you see that a huge, unrest takes place. And that's what has happened because of the forces behind it. Pakistan has always kept very close links with Jamaat-e-Islami, and the fact that the Jamaat-e-Islami was the main proponent of Sheikh Hasina's ouster is very clear, because the Chief of Army Staff yesterday, when he gave his press conference, that's what he said. He said, I've had meetings with the Amir of the Jamaat-e-Islami. That's the only party name he took.
Yes.
He didn't mention any of the other parties. So I think that is very, very significant. Now, having said that, they still haven't been able to finalize the interim government. The army is in charge. Certainly, we have to talk to the Chief of Army Staff. But, the moment the army stays in charge for more than a little while, you have the country saying, you can't do your peacekeeping operations. You can't participate in peacekeeping operations as long as you take political action or political role in the government. This in 2007 and 8, when the last time that there was an army-backed caretaker government, and there seems to be a repeat of that now. There was at that time a -2 formula, let's remove Sheikh Hasina, let's remove Begum Khalida Zia and have somebody else. And at that time, they turned to Professor Dr. Muhammad Yunus. So he had the support of the Western countries at that time.
Right.
And I suppose continues to. And then he tried to become the Prime Minister or become the head of the interim government. But he couldn't succeed. There were no takers for his political party. And within 3 months' time, he said, I'm giving up politics and I'm leaving. And now he's back. And there's no clarity whether, there's some visuals that some student coordinators, because there is no hierarchy in the students group, they're just coordinators, from different organizations and universities. And some of them are saying, we want, Dr. Muhammad Yunus to be there, we want him to be the head of the coordinating government, but we've heard other names have come in some of the Indian media today also about some intellectuals from the Jamaat and others who are wanting to head the government. So it's a very confusing situation, but the fact that there were others behind it is becoming clearer, I think, every day. And we have to see how this has happened and why it has happened.
Right.
What will be the future of the policies of all the projects that India has had with Bangladesh, whether it is the connectivity project or the rail project or the water project, the sharing of electricity, the grid power connectivity, and enormous, the connectivity with Nepal, the connectivity with Bhutan. All these were being discussed and negotiated, the BBIN, the BIMSTEC, all that. There's so much that has been happening in our neighborhood first foreign policy with Bangladesh. So obviously we have to wait and see what the government says now in Bangladesh.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.